today. Thank you
feeling
for your
better?
flexibility. Yeah, I just think the stresses of all of this are, bearing on us.
Yeah, I can relate. All right.
All right, you're up on YouTube now. I'm going to pull it and put it in our platform. Very exciting. Okay. I should share my screen while I do this. Everyone can see behind the. All right, so Tulani, you should be good to go. If you open it up on your phone, it should be there in the carousel.
All right, I see it. Here we go.
And then I'm going to do right now a ping out to everyone. I'm going to mute myself. You guys are good to go.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Wolfer Live today. We're going to be discussing functional wellness with Wolfer Samantha Anderson, who's joining us from Brooklyn, New York. And we want to thank you all for taking some time out of your day to spend it with us. And hopefully you'll get some insightful, helpful information that will carry you not only through the pandemic and what's going on, but also for life in general, because I think this is one of those fantastic pieces of information that we can all integrate into our daily life. So here is Samantha joining us. And I think the first thing is we all want to know a little bit about you, and more importantly, what brought you to functional wellness overall.
Thank you, Tulani, and thank you to all of you in the Wolfer community. It's wonderful to be with you this afternoon. I came to learn about functional medicine through my own personal journey of health. For most people who find functional medicine, there's a personal story, and mine was very real. I lost my father to a sudden heart attack when he was 59 years old. And on the day he died, he was vibrant. I, in fact, have a photo of him in the swimming pool with my eldest son on the morning that he passed away. And he's holding my son with like rippling muscles, and he looked energetic and vital. And it was a real shock to all of us that he passed away the way that he did. And we learned later on, I mean, he had autopsy and so forth, that he had congenital heart disease, and his health was deeply compromised. And we really were not that aware of that, while he was living. And we discovered, that there may have been some correlation between his own dental issues that he had, like staph infections and root canal and all the rest, that may have contributed to some of that heart disease. And I was in my 30s when that happened. And, I checked my health. I was monitored very closely, as was my sister. And when I turned 50, I started to have some similar issues of inflammation, inflammation in my gut. I was diagnosed with something called Hashimoto's disease, which is a thyroid condition, and some other, related antibody kind of issues. And I was sent to like 5 different siloed doctors, the cardiologist, the gastroenterologist, the rheumatologist, et cetera, et cetera. And I felt like a ping pong ball going back and forth between all of these different physicians, and really feeling like I was being treated like I was a body that was separated by individual parts. And it really just didn't seem right to me. And I started to explore a bit of what my options might be. And through a lot of research, somebody pointed me to functional medicine. And it was like this, aha, that's the way it should be. So I have spent a lot of time since then learning about functional medicine. And I've recently graduated from the Functional Medicine Coaching Academy, which is for coaches who are practicing in this practice of functional wellness. And I'll just share a little bit about what functional medicine is all about, if I could. So traditional medicine looks at the what, like what's the disease, what's the symptom, what's sort of at the end of the game, what's happened to the body. And functional medicine rather looks at the why. Why is somebody suffering from metabolic dysfunction? Like, why is depression and anxiety appearing? Why is somebody gaining weight? Like, they're looking at upstream why illness is occurring and trying to restore health by addressing root causes. So thinking about the body as kind of interconnected and a whole system.
It's funny because it would seem that this would be a given, that you would treat the entirety of the entity of oneself on the whole, but it sounds like this is something that I think a lot of the Wolfers, and particularly a lot of women, can relate to, but anyone who's either been through something traumatic personally or with a partner or a loved one,
Exactly.
but trying to get to the root cause and the why is often this very circuitous, frustrating process. So I can imagine that not only is functional medicine common sense from a conceptual standpoint, but it also must open up a lot of understanding about how our bodies function and how we relate not only to ourselves, but also to the outside world and influences that affect our health.
Absolutely, absolutely. We often think about functional medicine as if you can imagine a tree, right? A tree is dependent on nutrients like soil and water, and it relies on this root structure, right, for healthy function and strong branches and healthy leaves. And when the branches are showing disease, the soil and the roots are treated, but the body isn't treated the same way, right? From looking at all of the internal balance or imbalances that are going on in the body, and everything is connected, as you said. I discovered this odd sort of bump on my hand, which led me to look to an orthopedic surgeon. He didn't understand really what it was, but the functional medicine doctor said, "Oh, you may be demonstrating some autoimmune disease issues, and let's do some deep lab work and deep testing to figure that out." That led me to realize that I had a gluten sensitivity and a gluten allergy. That was sort of the cascade started from the food sensitivity, and it then emerged as an issue on my hand. But we don't think about the body that way, or at least traditional medicine doesn't. So that's like the overarching picture of what functional wellness or functional medicine does. I'm not a doctor, right? I'm like a health coach. And so what we're trained to do is work on what we call lifestyle factors that contribute to disease, right? So the doctors prescribe, they do their analysis and their evaluation, and they can prescribe medicine and all of the rest. The coaches are there to ride along, to help a person, a client, with what we call modifiable lifestyle factors. And those include things that I know a lot of the Wolfers care deeply about and are constantly talking about. We're all worried about how much sleep we're getting, right? So paying attention to a variety of sleep, what we call sleep hygiene, right? So practices to get your body ready for a night routine. I wear, for example, over my glasses at night so that I'm not affected by, because I can't put my phone down, by the blue light of the phone. I wear like a little attachment to my eyeglasses, which diminishes that blue light. And you can get that kind of anywhere, but that helps my body relax and sort of settle down. Creating a cozy environment with candles and senses and other kinds of sensations that can relax one before they go to sleep. This another factor, if you don't mind, I can. It
No.
sounded like you. Okay.
No, I had a question for you, but I'll come
Oh
back
yeah,
to
go
you.
ahead, please, please.
Well, I was just going to ask because it sounds a little bit to me like it is the confluence of a lot of practices and lifestyle uh, belief systems that are maybe espoused in countries other than the United States. For example, we had a Wolfer French language conversation last week, and one of the topics that came up was something called hygge, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But in Denmark, it is the practice of creating a very intimate, low light space for family and close friends so that they can have an experience that's very nurturing. Then you hear about other practices in other countries that inspire people to live a little more healthfully. I recently watched a documentary called The Okinawe, which was visiting the elderly people of Okinawa and examining how they live and how they eat and their daily practices with exercise. And so it's a very holistic approach. And I think that I'm wondering if you found that there's a little bit of greater necessity for functional medicine in our culture, particularly because Western medicine is certainly moving towards a more holistic approach, but we seem to have been very comfortable with the dissimulation of the self as far as medicine is concerned.
Yes, I think you've definitely hit on the right issue there. Functional medicine is actually just old-fashioned medicine when the doctor would appear with the black bag at the front door and see the patient and probably the neighbor and the friend that they are, so that and that really understands the dynamics that are going on in the family and the stressors that particular individual might have. It's not just looking at that individual in the office as okay, here's another person who I've got to churn through and sit with. But for what is it, 10 minutes, I think is like the prescribed allotted amount of time that most doctors see patients. But it's really going back to like basics, the way that it used to be practiced. Functional medicine doctors actually spend a lot of time with patients, much more than, I'm a patient at a practice here in New York City and a functional medicine practice. And I have sat for hours with my practitioner and have done intensive lab tests to really understand what traditional medicine might consider to be okay lab results. Functional medicine actually takes that a step further and says what's optimal, like optimally, what should your vitamin D levels be? Vitamin D is actually a great example given the COVID situation, because they're actually recommending that vitamin D levels be well over what's considered okay or normal in the range, and really try to escalate them up to being optimal. Yeah.
So I'm thinking, I had an opportunity and our viewers are going to get the chance to look at some of the documents that are on your website and your website in general. But one of the things that I really liked, because I am someone who often has negative reactions to medications, pharmaceutical medications, and it's not a philosophical thing, it's just a physiological thing. And what I really appreciated is that you do address the entirety of one's life, meaning my food, my rest, stressors and other elements that could really be coming to bear on my physical self. So if you could talk a little more deeply about that, I think that would be really helpful for people.
Yeah, sure. So we talked first about sleep. So that actually, I like to start with sleep because it is such a important issue, and one that we just kind of like poo-poo in a way, like, oh, I just didn't get a good night's sleep last night. But it actually is a driver for fundamental health. Like the amount and the quality of our sleep is so critical. And I'll just mention too, the people who melatonin is being researched right now during the COVID epidemic as being a potential remediator for poor outcomes in COVID-19. So sleep, melatonin, you need it. It is a protective function. Stress management, that's another piece of the puzzle. So now more than ever, we need to be building into our daily routines, however you can, find ways to release some of that stress, whether it's taking short walks. I know I live in the city. I know you live as well in the city, but even just taking a brief walk and just getting some fresh air and meditating during that walk, just finding, you don't have to necessarily sit down for a half hour or longer with, chanting, but just find convenient, brief ways to de-stress and make boost your immune system through that modality. It's really important. Um, we talk a lot about exercise, but I actually prefer the term joyful movement, because I think it's something that we all can do it to whatever our ability is. So if it's, like walking, as I just described, or if it's dancing, or if it's moving around in some way that actually just physically feels good, moving your body is also a incredibly supportive factor that we're finding can also ameliorate disease. You mentioned.
I'm just interrupting because I think that
Good.
term is something that's so special and so wonderful, and it feels like a positive, as opposed to, I know a lot of us get bogged down when it comes to exercise because there's something that feels inherently punishing about it, or
Yes,
unenjoyable, I should say. So joyful movement, if everyone can just remember that phrase, what a beautiful transformation you've made out of
for sure. Yeah, like I'm not into like militant, exercise. I think it's just moving your body and feeling really good about how your body feels when you're doing it. So food is a biggie, right? And we obviously spend a lot of time thinking about food and nutrition and hydration. So water is another sort of factor in this picture. And in functional medicine, there are a variety of different food plans, right, for various issues. And if anybody's interested in learning more about those, I can certainly talk to anybody about that after our chat today. There are food plans for cardiovascular health. There are food plans for autoimmune health. There are food plans for just general health. We call that the core plan. The basic bottom line is tons of vegetables and plant-based foods. Try to get the variety of color on your plate from the range of the spectrum of foods, right? Red, yellow, green, purple, blue, etc. Brown, white, all of the food colors, just bounty and color. And I know it's hard right now to source fresh vegetables and fruits, but it's absolutely critical that that's part of our daily diet. And the last factor that we spend a lot of time talking about is creating networks and social community. And the Wolfer community is such a beautiful example of what's possible, even in a virtual connection, to be able to maintain those relationships, not just online, but bringing them when we can in real life. I hosted here in my home in Brooklyn the Wolfer Christmas party, which was absolutely fabulous to actually meet many of the women who frequent the site and bring those relationships into real life. But as best as we can now to do what we're doing today to interact, I've had friends create book club. I mean, they don't always have to revolve around alcohol, I'll say too. Book clubs and, other types of, social interaction, I think is absolutely vital. And we do spend a lot of time talking about ways to maintain those relationships, even when we're disconnected the way that we are right now.
Well, and I think never before really has the term nourishing the soul been more apt, because anything that brings nourishment to oneself, be that social, emotional, psychological, as well as physical, I think is really important. And we're recognizing that a little bit more now that we're all, well, most of us are on pause. Of course, some of us are unfortunately on overdrive. But I have another question for you. A lot of us are in the role now of either being caregivers for parents, or some of us have children who have either returned home or are still in the home. And when we're paying attention to functional medicine for ourselves, that's one thing. But when we're doing it for others we're caring for, are there things that you would suggest, or are there tips you can give us when we're in those types of dynamics and we're trying to provide this for others?
For sure. I mean, the most important thing is to take care of yourself. Like they always say when you're on the airplane, to
Mhm,
make sure you put your oxygen mask on first. And I
mhm.
think that that's apt in this particular situation. You can't really care for others if you're not caring for yourself. Um, you know, I was I when we spoke earlier, you had asked me a little bit about my background in cognitive function, and I do have another type of certification in reversing cognitive decline, which I know is another issue that a lot of the Wolfers experience on our own, and also taking care of parents who may be also experiencing that. And there's, a lot that can be done. I know when people get, for example, a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, they think, oh, well, then, we're going to write them off and there's nothing that really can be done. But there's actually quite a lot that can be done with respect to many of the things that I've just shared: lifestyle factors, diet, um, exercise, supplements, and all these kinds of social interactions that are absolutely vital. So, I think making sure that there's, that that people can incorporate those 5 lifestyle factors in your life on a daily basis. However, I mean, you don't have to stress yourself to do it, but however you do it, um, take care of those that you love, and know that these are really, really, really challenging times, and to have grace for yourself and faith and patience that we're going to get through this.
Absolutely. So I think I just have a couple of small questions perhaps.
Mhm.
How does it work? So if I'm interested in working with a functional medicine or functional wellness coach, what do I do? What does that process look like?
Sure. So the doctors who have this kind of background take courses from the Institute for Functional Medicine. So an MD would go to IFM, Institute for Functional Medicine, and take courses on whatever particular area they're interested in. Say it's autoimmune or cardiovascular or whatever. They would get certified to practice in those modalities. And coaches like myself have been trained through the Functional Medicine Coaching Academy, which is affiliated with IFM. And there are a lot of coaches now who have that kind of background. And you can go to the Functional Medicine Coaching Academy and find a coach. There's a little button on that website, and you can find a coach. Um, I have a cohort of fabulous graduates who went through the program with me, and we are actually providing free coaching during this period of crazy COVID period, for anybody who feels like that they want to learn more about functional medicine. And I will say too that a coach really is a coach, like a sidecar, cheerleader, champion, like not the doctor, not prescribing. I mean, there's very clear boundaries for what we can and cannot do. So if somebody is interested in looking for an IFM doctor, you can find those on the website as well. There's a search function, so you can put in your geography, your city, and doctors' names will populate in the search button. And the same thing goes for functional medicine coaching.
And
Mhm.
then I just have a last personal question for you, because I don't know if a lot of the Wolfers know, but you're a mother and a stepmother. And I know that you've got kids scattered across the country and perhaps some closer. How is your family? How are you?
You're so sweet. Well, I do have a son in Los Angeles, and you've already volunteered to be, surrogate auntie if I if I do need that, and I'm grateful. Yeah, so 2 of them are here with us in Brooklyn. One is in LA. He was reluctant to come home given the circumstances here in New York, and my 3 stepkids are in Philly right now. Um, it feels disconnected and weird, and we're just trying the best we possibly can to maintain connection, even as disconnected as we are. my girls who are here with us are remarkably coherent in rolling into week 6 of this as they call it, quarantine. So they're putting on a good face. But it's a stressful time for all of us.
Sure, absolutely.
I'm trying to use what I'm preaching here on myself on a daily basis.
Yeah,
Not successfully.
Listen, physician, heal thyself motto.
Yeah.
For sure.
Mhm.
Well, I just want to thank you so much because I think this is something that's very close to my heart because as I shared with you, I had a stroke 2 years ago and I went through a similar process of not being able to get a lot of clarity and being treated like I was this part over here and that part over there.
Right.
And I kept preaching, well, I'm a whole me and let's not medicate me. Let's figure out what the cause of this was. So this definitely speaks to me in a
Mhm.
very meaningful way. And I'm glad that, I'm glad you could share this with us and really kind of enlighten us a little bit. I want to make sure that everyone, if you're watching this, I'm going to have Samantha give you her website so that you can log
Yes.
on.
Sure. Okay. So it's www.essential-wholeness.com. And I have put onto my website a whole bunch of resources that detail some of the recommendations that I shared on sleep and stress management and nutrition and so forth. And I can also put it into the Wolfer, I don't know where on the Wolfer page, but somewhere we can do that.
Yeah, we'll make sure that it gets up because I took a look at it and there's a lot of really excellent information there. So I encourage everyone to log on and take a look at that. So
Great.
Samantha, thank you so much
Thank
for your
you.
time. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we can have you come back and give us some more great tips and insights.
I would say let's get together, like
Yeah.
in person. Like that would be let's do that.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Wonderful. All right. Well,
Okay.
thank you again.
Thanks again.
And I will see you soon, I hope.
Okay, take care.
Thank you.